So in 2020, Black Lives Matter Global claims to have given $90 million to local Black Lives Matter chapters in black communities. You know, they had a nice pie chart. It was all laid out there and explained properly. A real A plus, high school class project. Two problems though. One, $90 million doesn't really seem like a lot of money for Black Lives Matter. And two, I don't believe you. Now, I made a video like this last year, but now we have some more up-to-date tax filings. A brief rundown on how this stuff works because it is intentionally complicated. Alright, it's June 2020. Orange Man is still president and still bad. You're sitting on your couch watching the news and you're hearing about George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all of this stuff. Your wife's boyfriend saunters out of your bedroom towards you. He's shirtless. He says to you, "That's screwed up." And the white guilt just starts overflowing and you donate $100 to Black Lives Matter. So the way you donate is through a donations platform called ActBlue. ActBlue will immediately take 3% or $3 out of the $100 for themselves for the price of doing business. But ActBlue does not then give the money to Black Lives Matter. It gives it to 1,000 Currents, and after July 10, this is Tide Central. Now, Tide Central and 1,000 Currents, these are the financial advisors of Black Lives Matter, which means that they are nonprofit and they oversee and control all of the donations coming in to Black Lives Matter. Now, if the financial advisor were to, for whatever reason, not seize the money before 30 days passes, ActBlue would keep the money and there would be no records whatsoever of this happening. But once 1,000 Currents has the money and has claimed it from ActBlue, it is now up to them to donate the money and grant the money back out to Black Lives Matter local chapters. Now, let's look at the Form 990 of 1,000 Currents, which shows all revenue, grants, assets, liabilities, up until June 30th, 2020. As we can see in the previous year, before this report, 1,000 Currents brought in $6 million. And then in the year of 2020, up until June 30th, they brought in $87 million. Now, obviously, there's no way to tell how much of this revenue was donated to Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is the biggest organization which they manage, and it is so big, in fact, that they ended up giving up control to Tide Central because of how big it was. Just get a figure in your head for how much you think they donated. Maybe half of it, $40 million, maybe some more. The answer is $3 million. The rest of the money, $83 million, is being held in cash assets by 1,000 Currents. So to reiterate, from the start of 2020 to June 30th of 2020, all of the money which was donated, pretty much all of the money which was donated to Black Lives Matter is currently being held for safekeeping by Susan Rosenberg and her charity. Susan Rosenberg, by the way, who is a convicted communist domestic terrorist. I'm sure she'll get around to donating that money and granting it out to Black Lives Matter soon, sometime soon. I'm just kidding. You guys clearly got scammed. That's hilarious. But I don't know, maybe we'll have better luck with the Tide Center. Now, the Tide Center had $250 million of revenue in the calendar year of 2020. Of that $250 million, they gave away in grants $60 million. It should be mentioned they had a $100 million revenue jump from the previous year, and, I'd say a lot of that probably had to do with Black Lives Matter signing on to them. Of the $60 million in grants which they gave out, you would think that they're donating pretty much all of that to Black Lives Matter, since that's where the money came from, right? Well, the largest single grant that they make, to the tune of about $20 million, is to Tide's Foundation, which is the parent company of Tide Center. So excluding themselves, they only really gave around $40 million to charity, right? But most of that money actually went to bail organizations. So maybe black criminals' lives improved from this money, but only about $4.7 million ended up being funded to local BLM chapters. So out of the total revenue Tide Center as a whole, the entire 501c brought in $250 million revenue. Black Lives Matter local chapters and Black Lives Matter affiliated programs only brought in $4.77 million, or 0.018%. So if you donated $100 to Black Lives Matter after July 10th, it looks to me like about $1.80 actually ended up in the hands of Black Lives Matter chapters. It's a bit strange, I think. Another interesting tidbit is the Tide Foundation, which is the parent of Tide Center and many different other Tide charities. Their yearly revenue, it increased from around $485 million in the year prior to, in the calendar year of 2020, just over $1 billion. And of course, Tide Center and Tide's Foundation, they're completely different things, even though one owns the other one. And Tide Foundation doesn't have any obligation to donate to Black Lives Matter local chapters whatsoever. And of course, there'd be really no way to tell if they were in fact siphoning money directly to Tide Foundation from Black Lives Matter. It's dark money, but, whatever. But that's not the issue. Anyway, after fortifying their revenue and seeing it double after a year, the purpose of the Tide Foundation is to take hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, and funnel it into grassroots activism organizations. These grassroots activism organizations, of course, push this global homo progressive agenda and obviously ask for donations. I mean, this is the most important part because, everyone expected that Black Lives Matter supporters were getting scammed, but the takeaway from this all is that anything that has widespread popular grassroots support, grassroots activism, is supported by hundreds of millions of dollars from the most wealthy and corrupt people on the planet. All of these left-wing grassroots organizations, which are supposed to show the popular support for progressivism, many of these organizations, which are socialist, are explicitly being funded by the political elite, the most wealthy and corrupt people in America. It's like a multi-level marketing scam. They receive donations in Tide Foundation, and then they pay the donation money to grassroots activists so that they can extract donations from people in order to pay more people to push this garbage. There is no popular support for this progressivism. There is no grassroots global homo. It is all coming from the wallet of these swamp-dwelling political elitists. Is this not the most terrifying totalitarian false democracy that one could imagine? This corrupt class of the political elite who owns all of the media, all of the systems of receiving information. They use their absolute control of the media, information, technology to feed you non-stop global homo propaganda. And people, they're upset with the rich, the powerful, the corruption, the politicians being bought, the lobbying scams. So the outlet that is presented to these people is grassroots activism, and they own it too. And then we have corporate-owned John Oliver and all these left-wing talk show hosts coming on the media every single night and saying, oh, all these MAGA supporters, all these Trump terrorists are going to kill our democracy. Well, yeah, man, I really support the killing of our democracy if our democracy just means a shadowy veil which conceals the corporate oligarchy, which is the actual form of government in America. Yeah, I say we kill it right now.